All right, we all ready?
Are we supposed to be connecting to the Zoom meeting?
No.
All right, I'd like to call to order the September 2nd meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Ms. Brunville, if you please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin.
Here.
Mr. Kanziger.
Here.
Mrs. Rose.
Here.
Mrs. Garvey.
Here.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Here.
All right. All please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Larry, is it possible to get a little more from Bob and Phil from the mic, but not everyone? All right, thank you.
All right, that's the most in sync we've been for a while on the Pledge of Allegiance. So,
Yes.
good job, everybody.
No delay.
Now we're gonna, if I can have a motion to approve the minutes for August 12th, August 5th, 2 of them, and August 24th. And second,
Second.
any discussion about the minutes? Seeing none, Ms. Brunville, if you please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger.
Yes.
Mrs. Rose.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, moving on to the portion of the meeting for board reports. If you please just go over the committee update and then any future meetings if you have any scheduled. Mrs. O'Toole for audit committee and board policy.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Audit committee met on Thursday, August 20th via Zoom. We discussed this year's audit, which is being performed by the Auditor of State's Office. The audit is underway and is primarily being conducted off-site this year. So we anticipate that our treasurer's office will be spending more time on the audit as they need to scan and send every document that the auditors wish to review. We anticipate that our next meeting will be a post-audit conference before calendar year ends. And so we're hoping that will be in person. Next committee is Board Policy Committee. Policy Committee met on Tuesday, August 25th via Zoom to review policies that needed updating. The committee's recommendations have been incorporated in the policies, and the updated policies are on tonight's agenda for a first reading. And we can talk more about it at that part of the agenda. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Mrs. Garvey, if you go over business advisory and capital planning.
Yes, there's no report tonight for Business Advisory Committee, Capital Planning, or the Board Finance and Budget Committee. And at this point, we have no meeting scheduled.
Okay, thank you. And I have no report for the records retention. All right, moving on. At this point, I'm going to turn over the meeting to Dr. Hunt.
Good evening, thank you. Just a couple of items on my reports tonight. I just want to talk briefly about the opening of school, then answer any questions the board might have regarding our opening. I also want to review some work we've done on kind of our COVID dashboard, in which we're going to monitor cases and progress on the elements that we've discussed in prior meetings. I will say on the dashboard front, I think we talked about this last meeting, that we would kind of bring something for you to review. Meanwhile, last week, the governor stated he was going to have an executive order requiring school districts to report this data. That order has not been published yet and finalized. I think we're working through final details, tried to, but didn't get an advanced copy. So please know what we share tonight may tweak and change as the requirements of the governor will have to be incorporated if they're different than what we're proposing tonight. In terms of the opening of school, I just really want to commend our staff, our students, and our parents for the tremendous effort. Our staff worked diligently over the first 2 weeks in a variety of professional development, setting up classrooms and getting ready for students. Our students came prepared, honoring and recognizing all the safety precautions. and our parents have been extremely supportive. So obviously we opened school officially for students in grades 1 through 12 on Monday. Kindergartners will start next week. Kindergarten screening did take place this week. I will tell you that this is a challenge instructionally. So when you're balancing not only what you have in the classroom with the students that you have virtually, it's a huge instructional challenge. You add that to move to a 90-minute block at the secondary level. That's a whole nother way of teaching and planning. So I just really commend our staff for taking this on, doing the best that they can. In terms of technology, we're very appreciative, and we'll talk, I think, next month specifically about the grant we received with a donation to upgrade technology. We're actually using some of that tonight. It has been effectively implemented in the district. We had some glitches early on with Zoom and things of that nature, but I think we all have to realize those things are going to happen. It's going to be part of this learning curve. I think walking around the district on day one, I was shocked just walking through the intermediate school. Within 20 minutes, I'm walking into classrooms, I'm greeting kids virtually online and kids in the classroom. So we've got up and running very quickly. So that's, again, a credit to not only our staff and some of their technology staff and their support as well. Busing has been a tremendous amount of time in planning the midday run. We had a great deal of success there. We're still working through some of the glitches specific to Gurney with drop-off and pickup. There's a lot of waiting. I think we maybe over-encourage parents to drive, and they, like our parents do, they rallied around that. So we're going through and kind of auditing who signed up to be on buses, making sure that they are on buses, because we actually have a waiting list of parents who would like to use that transportation. So we're going to work through that in the next week or so. Mike Morgan's monitoring all of that. We'll start communicating with parents towards the end of this week in preparation for next week. Staffing redeployment. As the board knows, we redeployed our kitchen staff, or at least a portion of that staff for midday cleaning to support in the transition. The midday cleaning is a challenge from a staffing perspective. I'd like to commend and thank. We've had teachers step up and say, I'll leave this portion of my room and take care of it to help us get through. So we certainly appreciate that. We are currently using some overtime. And again, I think it's one of those things. We originally budgeted 8 minutes per room to clean. I actually stopped at one of our custodians today. I said, okay, how long is it taking to get through? He said about 3.5, 4. So I think some of that time, that overtime will work itself out as we kind of work through that. But again, everybody's stepping up and doing their part. And I think as the board knows, as Mr. Rankin there, our first football game was last Friday. And I could not have been prouder of our student athletes, our band members, and those in attendance. Everyone adhered to everything that we asked. No complaints. They did everything possible to keep it as safe and healthy as possible. We ask that we continue that this Friday. So I think overall, the opening has been very successful. We continue to work through things, operationally to make them as efficiently as possible. But the best thing has just been seeing students and reconnecting with them. And I think they all appreciate the opportunity to be back together. And it's very genuine when you see them, talk to them, and I'm getting the same from our staff members as well. So just appreciate everybody's hard work. Thank you to the board for your support over the last couple of months to get to the opening of the school. I'm very happy with that. I'm going to pause on the opening of the school and see if there's any questions or comments from the board before I dive into our dashboard that we're going to utilize.
I just want to say I have a student in intermediate school and a student in high school, and then just genuine enthusiasm from their teachers has been so motivating. Both of my kids came home with this just tremendous excitement for the year. My intermediate school student said he thinks it's going to be the best year he's ever had because he really loves the fact that we have smaller classes in the morning. And my high school students had a couple of user errors, but they've been greeted with, the teachers responding, and we're going to figure this out, and just the stress levels and the ease of transition. I really not have asked for a better experience, and I know how much effort that is taking on everyone's part, and as a parent, I'm just tremendously appreciative. So thank you.
Everything I've heard has pretty much been the same, from busing to the school experience, to the parents. It's all been, there are little glitches here and there, but everybody's taken them in stride.
So we're going to talk about this administratively tomorrow. We're going to kind of benchmark the day, but we will get some feedback from our students and our parents on, especially the virtual side, how's it going on their end. Mike actually has a document that's prepared. It's going to go out Monday. Some of it has been internet capabilities and capacity at home, and giving them some tips at home to help free up some of that bandwidth. And we'll kind of get a sense of where we're at from our students, parents, and teachers, and take that into consideration as well in terms of any modifications or changes. Okay, I want to introduce then the dashboard. We've spent some time at board meetings over the last 3 months talking about criteria in which we would evaluate a transition between kind of models, and from a hybrid to a full all-in approach, or to a remote. And we've identified a variety of characteristics. And we also talked about being very transparent with our families and our community regarding any positive cases and keeping them informed of those. So we've worked with the CDC. Obviously, we've had the experience, as you can see, where we have had both a student and a staff member test positive or be presumed positive because they had direct contact with a family member. So this just gives you an idea of what we will be tracking and how we will be tracking it over the course of working in this COVID environment. So we'll look at active student cases and active staff cases. So that gives you kind of a trend on who's actually dealing with it at the moment we release this report. That number is 0 right now because both the cases we have had have kind of gone through that 14-day period, and doctors have granted permission for those individuals to either return to or to school. So that is the discrepancy in that. Then you'll have a cumulative total of the cases that we've had for both students and staff as well. We're going to make that dashboard in a way that you can click on it and you can actually identify areas. So if you have an X case, for a staff member, you'll know what building it's in, so you can look at data per building. We talked about how far you want to go with that. I think that's about as deep as we're going to go with the data, just to protect people's medical information. But it does give us an idea of kind of averages and tracking. The right-hand side of that is the other components of the dashboard. And don't put a lot into the colors today. We didn't put a lot of conversation. It's more of a visual for you. But this is what it will look like. And I think I know our first meeting in October is when we look at the first dashboard. But the other components, as you recall, are health and safety. How are we with acquisition of PPE? How are we doing with health and or sanitary practices? Where are we at with our midday clean, our transportation clean buses between routes? An evaluation of all of those things would play into the health and safety component. Staff attendance and student attendance. The other piece of staff attendance is our ability to place subs and fill subs, so that sub rate would be included in that measure as well. And then obviously at the bottom is the Ohio Public Health Advisory System. So the goal of this is to have it present and out on our district website that we would update at least every 2 weeks for our parents to see. Obviously, there are going to be notification requirements that we're going to have as a school district if there are positive cases. So if we have a positive case in a classroom, we would notify at that level. So this is just one way of kind of showing the public kind of where we stand with COVID, but there are other things that are in place. I did release a letter that we did get some questions on how we report, when we report, what is our process, and what is the guidance. First thing is, when we have a confirmed case, we immediately contact either Cuyahoga or Geauga County Board of Health, and we walk through that case with them. We do a lot of the contact tracing here. So we'll actually we'll have our nurses take the lead on this, ask questions of their interactions. The way that it works for contact tracing is when you exhibit symptoms and or are a positive case, you backtrack 48 hours, and 48 hours you use the standard of the CDC standard is within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. However, Cuyahoga County has asked us to use within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes. So we use the standard, obviously, of the county. If they identify individuals that they were in less than 6 feet, greater than 10 minutes, they would be kind of someone that would be identified as being exposed at that point.
Indoors? Is that indoors only?
Indoors and out.
And
So that is the criteria we will use and kind of work through. You know, one of the benefits of a hybrid model, I think, is, you know, the dashboard is important and will serve us, but kind of as I've thought through this, one of the benefits is if you have a positive case in a classroom, if you've got at least 6 feet within that classroom, they don't fall under that requirement. If we and when we go all in, we will strive to do the best we can, but I cannot commit to 6 feet. If there's an exposure, those students around would be contacted, you know, and identified. So that's something to think about that wasn't on my mind when we were going through this, and we may want to discuss further going forward before flipping to an all-in approach as it's another outlet.
do those students then have to quarantine
Yes.
for 14 days?
Yes. So those students would be identified.
So it occurs to me that the districts that were considering having less than 6 feet, going with like the AAP recommendation of 3 feet, they would have been in a situation, I think many of them now are all virtual, but they would have then been in a situation where everybody would have to quarantine if it was around a student because it would be only a 3-foot distance.
Yeah, and I think you've seen, like, the governor's put out the example of a church or a party where the people around and how it's spread, and that's what it would look like. You go, and every one of our teachers has to have seating charts. We go on the bus, they have seating charts. We look at who was in close contact, how long, and then they would be identified as being exposed and kind of
Yeah.
communicate that.
It's definitely a consideration. I think that wasn't on a lot of people's radar, you know, with pushing to go have everybody go back, that, you know, it could really hamper the learning process if you have half of a classroom, for example, that has to be out because of quarantine.
So, yeah, and I think a caveat to the data that we're going to review, we got to keep that in the back of our minds.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Sort of on the horizon of if we're making a decision about moving towards full day, is there any scenario in which we will be able to continue to offer to the families that are finding hybrid works very well for them? If we move to full day, from when I look at the schedules, like, so would the high school schedule then move away from the block and return to a traditional schedule, or would they continue? Maybe this is stuff we haven't worked through yet, but can we see
Yeah,
ourselves
we're
in a
going to push
world
the
where
administrative team over the edge. Like, I've worked on, you know, unwinding this, but I want to give them a week or two to get into it before we talk about unwinding. I could see the way we're operating at 7-12 is eventually you're just plugging into the class when you're outside. I could see potentially continue to offer that if that makes sense. But we just have to think through, you know, kind of the consequences of doing that. So I haven't gone into that. Any other questions or comments on this?
I just wanted to say, I think you've been doing a really nice job with your communications and reminding everybody that we're all in this together, and, you know, we all want to have the kids in school. We want to have them in the athletics. And I was listening to the governor, probably it was Tuesday, reminding us all that with a long weekend and a holiday weekend, you know, we've seen increases of cases in Ohio after a 4th of July weekend or Memorial Day weekend, and we just need to remember that even though it's tempting to go to a party or have, you know, a bunch of friends over, that we still need to stay the course.
Absolutely, that was in my closing comments.
Oh, good.
Catherine and I are ready to join your team.
The more we can remind people, the better.
Have you seen any data on like in schools that had cases that they been able to figure out how it happened? Is it usually outside of school coming in? Is it some
So
sort of thing
the
in
limited
school
cases-
particularly dangerous?
Yeah, I'm not going to identify. I have talked to superintendents that have positive cases. I shared with one that was pretty extreme in a letter that I sent out to the community where 20 cases were tied back to a graduation party and had pretty significant implications for the school district. Most of the early ones now are tied to events outside. I think as school progresses, you'll start to see, you know, inside. You know, and the thing that's hard is it's going to be impossible to identify where you actually, where it originated, where certain individual got it. But most of it is outside of that spot. Okay, so I would expect, not at our next meeting, but the first week in October, part of my report will be an update on this with a little more meat on the bones in terms of why we rated to put things in certain places and how we feel it's going. So we'll continue to move this forward. Based on Governor, obviously with the caveat of the governor's order coming out tomorrow, we'll make changes. I'd like to share this with the community. In fact, I rolled out an email, I think it went out this afternoon, but we're going to do a kind of a digital, a virtual forum live stream next week. One of the items is I'm going to share this with our community. I think there's some interest around it as well. All right, if there's no questions, that's it. Right here.
All right, moving on, we've got audience community participation. I have one item to read. Ms. Bruno or Dr. Hunt, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. So what I have is a note from the levy committee. So we, the levy committee chairs, are spreading the word about the need for the 3.85 mil operating levy, which is on the November 3rd ballot. Originally, the board planned to ask for 7.9 mils. However, they have reduced the ask to 3.85 mils, which is the same amount of millage that will be falling off of our tax bills at the end of this year. The new levy will not increase your tax bill. We ask the community to support the levy and sustain Chagrin by voting in favor of the levy in November. If the levy does not pass, the district will request 7.9 mils in May, which will increase our taxes. Please support the district and the new levy, which again will not increase taxes. Hopefully that's clear. Thank you, and this is from the levy committee chairs, Marlo Peck, Tamara Chess, and Carrie Falk. So that's for our community members. I appreciate them writing the letter, and obviously I know myself and everybody on the board supports every sentiment that they put in that letter. So let's go for the passage of November 3rd.
And just a couple of things to add there for informational purposes. I did mention next Thursday I'll be doing a reopening the school presentation. Talk a little bit about the levy, not a lot, but we also created 2 virtual town hall meetings. The whole community will get invitations to these in the mail. But these are district sponsored, so it'll be very factual based. And Ashley and I will put those together. So that'll be September 22nd and 29th at 6 p.m. Again, more information will be coming on that.
All right, moving right along. Consent agenda items. Can I have a motion for consent agenda items 7A through 7L?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on these items?
I would just like to, I think Valerie Birch is the only retirement. I want to thank her for her service to the district. She's worked in food service, FLSH, variety of roles for our district, so appreciate her service.
Discussion of any of the other items? Bruno, if you please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
All right, moving right along. Superintendent's recommendations. Can I have a motion for superintendent's recommendation 8A through 8J?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Hunt, if you can please speak to any of these.
Sure. Item 8A, I'm recommending, as part of the memorandum of understanding with CFEA, we agreed to add permanent building substitute teacher positions at an agreed upon rate. I'm recommending that we add 4 of these, 1 per building, just due to the potential shortage of substitutes, needing continuity in buildings among 4 staff that are out. And so we did put together a job description. I'm asking the board to approve that job description. That's item A. Item B is the approval of the first of those individuals, Linda Levy, a lot of experience in the district, and is being recommended to fill that position for the intermediate school. Item C, I'd like to thank Greta for her service to the district. She's worked directly with students and done a great job with our students. Items D, E, and F. Those are not additional positions. Those are replacement positions for the school district. Item G is a recommendation for the approval of a How teacher, principal, school counselor evaluation system. We have to be credentialed, basically complete coursework, take an assessment to do these evaluations, and the board is asked to approve that at least every year, so this is an annual approval. Item H is the recommended times for bus stops. I do want to pause here just to reiterate with our parents. These, sometimes people think these are hard and definite times. These are kind of approximations, and typically that first week of school, as drivers are getting used to routes, parents are getting used to routes, they are a little bit delayed. We'll get closer to those times as we go forward, but use that as a general guide for arrival. I'd suggest getting out 10 or 15 minutes before that, in the next 2 weeks probably. So that's an annual approval asked of the board as well. And then item I, certainly Mr. Kanziger and Ms. O'Toole, if you want to jump in, Ashley, there's a recommendation for first reading approval on a variety of new policies. A lot of the changes in these, I'd say the vast majority, is due to changes in Title IX law regarding sexual harassment. So that really played into a lot of these, and I think if you kind of click on it and scan through it, you'll see that those legal changes are made. I don't know if there's any specifically anyone has questions about, or
I would just add the really only significant change that isn't related to Title IX would be policy JED, student absences, and that change is due to the COVID thing, because we do not penalize students for their 14-day quarantines and things like that. So other than that, most everything is related to the Title IX, and it's just we have to have specific wording, things have to be in writing, and there's a certain format for complaint procedures. So these are all updating that, and then a few other policies. There were no policy changes, legal reference changes because of laws. So I hope that is clear.
Do you have any updates on the hiring process for the long-term subs? Have we had candidates?
I know other buildings have started. Some people have ideas and recommendations, people we've worked with before. I would imagine we'll have those all filled by the next meeting. The only other item is item J, and that's a recommendation to enter into an agreement with the Diversity Center of Northeast Ohio. I will likely present at our next meeting an overview of the process that we will go through, or at least recommend that we go through to address the issues of diversity, equity, inclusion in the district. I contact 3 different organizations or individuals that have done some of this work, talked to various districts, and feel comfortable with the Diversity Center. This is an approval of a bank of hours that would align with the process that we would present to you at our next meeting. So we're just banking the time now, and then I'll show you how that will play out at our next meeting.
You could include also some examples. I know you have been very impressed with the work they've done. I know they do a lot of work within school districts. you probably are going to give us some examples of other projects they've done in their districts that they've worked with.
Yeah, they've got a lot of programming just to use. This is more about helping us, take an internal look and plan, and maybe we'll be using some of their programming moving forward. This is really about understanding what our needs are, and then we can match programming either from the diversity center or from other places. But yeah, there's some school districts, I'll give you examples of how they've integrated the different programs and or models. They even assign certain people to districts that are in district all the time to serve as administrative capacity. So it's as far as that to just, presentations and things they'll bring. So we'll definitely give you an overview of that.
And is there a point person within the district who will be their primary contact, or you're not there yet?
We're not there yet.
Okay.
So far, it's been me. That would conclude my recommendations.
Okay, any other discussion? Ms. Bruno, you can say the roll.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Bros?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
All right, moving right along, treasurer's recommendations. I'll just break out 9C since it involves me. So 9A and 9, can I have a motion for 9A through 9D?
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
All right, item A is the financial reports for July. I realize these are a little late. We were not ready in time for the last board meeting, so think back to July. These are not August statements yet, this is July. First report, you want to scroll through it? First report is the general fund, the summary report. This one, typically, once we get the 5-year forecast in place, we have forecasts and estimates for every month. We will show all the months in there. Right now, all we have in there is July. As we move to the revenue report, I'll talk a little bit more detail about the revenue. The first one out there is for the property taxes. We are about a month behind on our property tax advances from the counties right now. In a typical year, in June, we would have received about $500,000 advance. Then in July, we would get the large advance. This year, we got $455,000 in July. Then in August, we got the advances that we normally would have received in July. So we're running a little bit behind here. State Foundation right now is coming in still at the same numbers as what we finalized at last year. I was on a call today with a member of ODE who is a part of the department that handles the foundation payments right now. They don't know what's going to happen with those, so we are still going with the same numbers as last year. So those numbers should be consistent for at least a few months. The tuition there, those negative numbers that you see, those are because in July we were still giving refunds for all the kindergarten and preschool. So those are, that's why you see those negative numbers there on revenue. Moving on to the expenditures, again, just July. This is the one that I kind of tend to change the charts and the graphs and kind of show you different things each month. This month I wanted to kind of break out what it is in salaries, because we always talk about that chart that shows how much of our total expenditures are salary. I wanted to kind of show you how much of our salaries go toward what. So the largest pieces of the pie there, those two orange pieces, that's instruction. So just to give you an idea of how much of our salaries, we know that the salaries and benefits makes up about 80% of expenditures typically. That's how much of the salaries goes directly to instruction. So I think that's important for everybody to understand. Next pie chart there is student benefits. That blue portion on the bottom, that's retirement, so SERS and STRS, which are required by law. Those are contributions that we have to make. And then obviously the largest of the largest portion is our medical coverage, which makes sense. Purchase services, right now, for July, the largest portion of our purchase services is that maintenance and custodial contract with Sodexo. That is, you're going to see that change going forward because that contract is ended at the end of August. What you will see though is a shift in supplies. So right now, the maintenance and custodial supplies, if you go to supply graph chart, is 0.04%. That's because Sodexo was covering all of those supplies. So as we move away from that contract, you're going to see expenditures and purchase services decrease, but you're going to see expenditures and supplies increase because now we have to make all those purchases ourselves. Still will be an overall savings, but don't be shocked when you see supplies go up this year. This is kind of a new report that I included at the end of the year last year, just kind of comparing the previous year. I decided to keep it going and just compare it to the prior 2 years so you can kind of see how we're trending. For July there, you can see our revenues are much lower than in the past, but we already talked about that. That's because of the advance. That typically in a normal year we would have received in July. We did not receive that this year. We will get that, or got it in August. So that explains that very large dip there. And then the expenditures too, you can see our July expenditures are a little bit lower than normal, which is good. It is what we expect to see given everything that all the work we did last year to start reducing our expenditures. So you're going to start seeing that. Moving to the financial summary report, this is just the activity for each fund at a fund level. Nothing too significant to report there. The local grants, that negative number there, that's the technology expenditures that we made, and we just requested reimbursement for those from that grant. So you'll see that negative number go away soon. And then the bank reconciliation, just the typical adjusting items, the STRS, which gets posted after the year end. We do the ACH out of the bank after the month end, sorry, I said year end. And then the Ohio tax is the same thing, that just comes out of the bank account after month end. Summary of deposits and investments. This is the same report that we've been using for quite a while now. Most of our money is still in Star Ohio. Hopefully someday interest rates will pick up and we'll start moving things into some things to earn us some money, but for now, our best bet. And then I used to, when we were using a different investment management account, go in and we would hand key all of those into a spreadsheet. Redtree provides pretty nice report. So to kind of streamline things and not duplicate the work, I decided to just start using their report and throw it in. It's actually got some pretty good information in here. And it still does list everything that we had in our prior report as well. It is kind of making me a little bit crazy that it's vertical and all of my reports are horizontal. I'm going to have to figure something out with that. I don't know if I can get them to change their report, but I will try. So before I move on, are there questions on the financial reports? Item B is then now certificates. There are 3 of them. These are for things that we needed to purchase at the beginning of the year to get moving. Could not wait for the purchase order, and we went ahead and made those purchases and got the purchase order in place after we were invoiced.
Did we buy hand sanitizer for the whole year?
We bought hand sanitizer on so many different purchase orders. I don't believe we bought it for the entire year now. I believe that's going to be an ongoing.
Yeah, we divided up the procurement into 3 different companies just to make sure we.
Sure. Make sure you can get it.
I think we feel very good through to January, and then we'll be able to evaluate that more.
Yeah. Right now, we are also charging all of those expenditures to the CARES funding. that funding has a life of us through this calendar year, we have to spend it, so I'm directing everything that has to do with COVID to that first. Then we'll move on to the ESSER funds, and then once that's gone, then it'll start hitting your general fund.
Gosh, I just want to say once again, how much I appreciate that you customize your report for what we need to hear about, not given month, and every time giving us a little more detail in a specific area. It's just really helpful. I really appreciate that.
Discussion?
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose? Yes. Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Thank you. Item C is donations. We have 2 items here.
And we need a motion.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I could have a motion for 7C?
Seconded?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, first item is a subscription to Teen Health and Wellness for the middle school. It's a database, has a $595 value from Rosen Digital. That was received as a result of Angie Jamison applying for something and receiving an award, and her award was a subscription for a district. So thank you to her for obtaining that. And then the second item is 12 hand sanitizer stands, a value of $1,200, and those are from Mr. Phil and Kristen Rankin. Recommending your approval of these donations.
Is you may or may not know this, is the subscription accessible by parents with Teen Health and Wellness?
That I do not know.
Okay,
It might only be
staff?
staff, or I believe that's for students, actually.
Okay.
I can get more
Just shoot me an
information.
email, I can ask Angie, get you the information.
Sorry?
Just shoot me an email, I'll ask Angie and we'll let you know.
Okay. There may be other parents who would be interested in reading it too, so that'd be great. And thank you, Phil and Kristen, for the donation.
Yeah. Our pleasure. All right. Please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin?
Stay.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose? Yes. Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
There's my portion of the agenda.
All right, thanks. Now we're to the other business section. If anybody has any other business they'd like to bring up?
I'd just like to reiterate some dates I said earlier. Virtual meeting next Thursday, August 10th at 6 p.m. regarding the reopening of school. 2 virtual town hall meetings. Mrs. Root and I will do September 22nd and 29th. I want to thank Mr. Doherty. I think Ashley was involved in this as well. We received a broadband grant through the state of Ohio for $20,000 to expand our Wi-Fi outside of Gurney Elementary and on the 712 campus. And I just reiterate what Mrs. Garvey pointed out earlier. Every holiday seems to attract, forward out a couple of weeks, it tracks a spike in COVID. I think at least from the events that we have had and what I've seen from our students and parents who are working together in a very good way, I'd like to keep that going so we can stay in school as long as possible. So just encourage people to be safe this weekend and so we can keep going.
Great. Anything else? Moving on, so our next meeting will be Wednesday, September 16th at 6 p.m. I believe we're going to have it here again. Okay. Right back here. And now, Mr. Kanziger, if I have a motion for executive session.
In accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22, the Great Falls Board of Education will go into executive session for the sole purpose of the consideration of any of the following matters: employment, compensation of a public employee or official.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And Ms. Bruno, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose? Yes. Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
We do not anticipate any action